It's more like working your way up a hill. But here's the thing. As you move forward up that hill, you realize you can do it. You start to internalize your ability to do it differently. You start to continue that visualization of you achieving that next level about going forward. Yeah, you're going to slide backwards because everybody slides backwards, and that's okay. Imagine this, right? You are trying to overcome depression, anxiety, could be personality disorder, traits, or whatever it may be, and it seems in your way, and the harder you try, the harder it is to go forward. It seems like you're taking 2 steps forward, but 2 steps back. Well, this video is about how that mental health component that we kind of internalize, how it works against us, and it creates us being our own enemy. So we are going to break it down and talk about it. So a lot of times this can come out of a lack of self-awareness. And it isn't always just a lack of awareness about yourself. It can also be about the things that you say to yourself, about how your mental health condition or conditions are impacting how you see yourself, others, and the world around you. Most mental health conditions, what they do is they create a distortion of how you see yourself, others, and the world around you. This distortion actually perpetuates the mental health condition. Let's use depression as an example. So you're feeling depressed, and because depression is paradoxical, which means that you need more energy, more engagement in order to battle depression, but depression saps the energy to do the things you need to do to get over depression. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't. But what happens is, and part of the component and how we kind of fight that is that we have to recognize the distortion that depression creates. Now, there's decades of research that shows this, that individuals that are depressed, and based upon the severity of that depression, that they have a negative outlook about self, others, and the world around them. They feel hopeless, helpless, worthless, and it impacts their ability to engage in their environment. So what we need to do is we need to slow down and say, wait a minute, how am I working against myself? How am I being my own enemy? And depression, we can say it's this like evil little character that's in your brain. And this is true for depression, anxiety, a whole host of mental health conditions, including personality disorders, that this evil little character that's in your brain. And I call it, with my clients, family in the head. I got that term from Lorna Smith Benjamin, a wonderful psychologist, and that it's this family in the head, and it tells us you're worthless. Don't even bother. It's not even worth it. And in some cases, to continue with our example of depression, that it tells you, you know what? The safest place is in your bed. The safest place is when you're isolated and by yourself, because you don't have the energy. Or you should distract yourself with social media. But what happens is that you get on social media, and then that gives that family in the head, that evil little character is like, oh yeah, because the things you're looking at, then you compare your life to their life. But it's not authentic when you see someone else and how they're living their life, that you start to say, well, my life isn't like that. I mean, it's never that great. I don't go to fancy places like that to eat. I don't go on those amazing vacations. I don't have new cars. I don't have this, that, da, 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 da. But that's the distortion, because we forget that social media is what, 10%, 20% at most of someone else's life. See, we don't do that because that's the enemy, that family in the head, that perpetuates that mental health. And we've got to be aware of it. First thing is you've got to be aware of it and know that your enemy is having you engage in behaviors and thoughts that encourage the mental health condition, anxiety, depression, BPD, and so forth and so on. So we have to be aware of that. We have to have that awareness that it exists. Now, I understand that there can be this fear of failure, that you can be afraid that, well, if I get up and try to engage it, what if I don't do it? What if I can't do it? Oh, hold on a minute. That's that You being your own enemy. That's your mental health condition playing with your brain and your distortion of how you see yourself, others, and the world around you. It's telling you, don't even bother to try. You're never going to be able to do it. What's the point of even trying? So you might as well just stay in bed, stay isolated, don't even try, just stay there because there's nothing you can do about it. And really what it means is that I'm afraid that you may learn strategies to decrease my power, my influence, so then I don't exist anymore. Or if I exist, it's so small that then you can just slap me away and say, you're not going to impact me today. You're not going to impact me and how I am with my significant other, my family, my friends, or with myself. I'm going to get up. I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to shower every day. I'm going to take care of myself and even go for a walk every day. Whatever it is, doing those things. But it plays on that fear of failure. And so much so that it overwhelms you. And it's like kind of, being in the ocean, right? And you're in this life preserver and you're kind of floating around. And what your mental health says, well, you're not just going to be floating on easy seas. I'm just going to plow you, right? Like in a perfect storm. If you ever see that movie, just pow, just this massive, massive tidal wave after tidal wave after tidal wave. And that's what dealing with mental health feels like. It's just constant over and over and over and over again to the point where you kind of give into it a little bit. It becomes too much. It becomes too hard because a lot of mental health conditions are paradoxical. Is that in order to engage in the strategies, we need the energy to utilize that, but most mental health conditions sap the energy to do that. And so we expect these big grand things. Okay, I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to stop drinking, smoking, sleeping around, gambling, whatever it is. And I'm going to do it different this time. And then it says, no, you're not. And if you try, you're going to fail. And when you fail, you're going to realize that you're worse off because you tried and failed. What? That's a paradoxical thought. Because what we need to do is we need to get in our head first. We have to clear that distortion. We have to stop being our own enemy and stop perpetuating those mental health conditions. And I understand that this is hard because they start to get on replay, right? They start to feel like a broken record. And they play, and they play, and they play, and they play, and they play. And it's over and over again. And after a while, see, human beings are adaptive. We know that, right? So when we're in a situation, if we can't change that situation, right, we adapt to it and we think, oh, adapt. Well, that must be great. Well, not if we're adapting to negative circumstances that make us feel less than or takes away our sense of self-efficacy and agency to push back. See, then what happens is when we get a little boost, like if you're listening to this, as you're watching this video, perhaps you're like, yeah, I'm going to start thinking it and imagining it first. I want you to see it in your head, right? I had a client many years ago. He told me, no one does anything without at least picturing it first. And I'll never forget that. And I was like, you know what? It's kind of true. Whether we picture it for a millisecond or we picture it for hours. But what I want you to do is I want you to picture yourself, and this is going to be tough. And I don't want you to procrastinate. I don't want you to listen to that family in the head, to that evil little creature, right, that's in there that's telling you, that's too much work. No, it's not, because even if you're doing it for a millisecond, it counts. Because a millisecond can become 2 milliseconds, 5, 10, right? 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 hours, whatever it is. Everything grows. Because, to go back to our example about adaptability, that we can adapt to situations, but we can also adapt to mental illness. And adapt, even though it sounds good, we can maladaptively adapt. And that's where we stop fighting back. It's an old story about when they used to train elephants. What they would do is when they were baby elephants, they would tie these really strong ropes, right, around the elephant's legs. And the elephant would push, right, to get out. And the elephant can't as a baby. It can't. And tries and tries and tries and tries and tries and tries. Can't get out. So eventually the baby elephant just gives up. And what's interesting is as that elephant gets older, that they can still hold that elephant in place with that same rope, right? And if the elephant were to even move, it could easily break that rope, easily, but it doesn't because it learned and it adapted to its inability to break that rope. As it got older, as it changed, maybe at one point, depression, there was too much going on. You needed to slow down. Maybe it was anxiety that was telling you somebody you're around isn't safe, or something that's going on around you doesn't feel right, or whatever it may be. But where you are today doesn't mean, the elephant you are today doesn't mean that you can't break that rope. It doesn't mean that you can't go back and say, whoa, 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 and turn down that volume of Family in the Head. Turn it down. Push back on that evil little creature. And it's by doing that, it's having that image first. It's imagining yourself getting out of bed, eating right, just for a millisecond. It's seeing yourself healthier and the person that you want to be. If you don't see it in your head, you can't become it. And that can work for you or against you. And your mental health, absolutely, if it's a mental health disorder, absolutely paints a picture of you being stagnant, stuck, afraid, broken, overwhelmed, all that stuff. Push back on it. We got to stop being our own enemy where we are amplifying the noise, sound, and impact of our mental health. And we have to push back on it. It starts with that visualization. It really does. If you're like, oh, I don't believe in visualization, that doesn't make any sense because all of us visualize different circumstances, right? We're going in for an interview. Don't you imagine how it's going to go? We go on a date. Don't you imagine how it's going to go? Of course you do, right? What about you're going out? You're going to the grocery store, right? I got to go to the grocery store later. I imagine how it's going to go. And I don't spend my whole day thinking about, oh, what's it going to be like at the grocery store? But I think about it for a minute. Oh, yeah, I got to go pick somebody up later. I imagine, okay, I imagine getting there on time. I presume I will. And it's that same thing. It's using that. But use that imagination, use that visualization about you overcoming your mental health, whatever those conditions are. And sometimes it can be hard to identify, well, what do I imagine first? Imagine the little things. If your depression, if your anxiety, if your BPD, if your NPD, all of that stuff is telling you, stay in bed, I want you to envision yourself getting out of bed, even for a minute. If you're not brushing your teeth twice a day, I want you to imagine doing that. If you're not showering every day, I want you to imagine yourself doing that. If you're not brushing your hair every day, and you're somebody who brushes their hair every day, then I want you to imagine doing that. Those are the things we start with. Then going for a walk. Just going for a walk. Doesn't have to be for an hour. It could be just for 3 minutes. I don't know. Walk your mailbox and back. Whatever it is, but it's doing those things. It's imagining those things. Then, once you've embraced that visualization, then I want you to start to do it. Put it in place. And it's important to break these things down. Don't see it as this enormous, enormous task. It's not. They're baby steps. They're baby steps to get to where you need to be. And remember, the idea of perfectionism is used against you by your mental health. It's this idea that, oh, well, I'm going to magically get out of bed. I'm going to no longer be depressed or anxious or work against myself or have abandonment fears or feel guilty, shame, doubt, whatever it may be. No way. So that's not realistic. Because what happens is, if you have a mental health condition that you're dealing with, and just about everybody on the planet has something, some depression, some anxiety, some fear, something like that, if we want to call that a mental health condition, but it's that issue. Some of us, all of us have issues, right? And to varying degrees. Some of us have really massive issues. But if we see it as perfectionism, which is, and believe me, that family in the head, that evil little creature, wants you to see it this way, that you're going to get up and magically everything's going to be different and you're going to use all that energy, by golly, and you're going to suddenly, shed your skin, right? Like a snake sheds its skin of your mental health conditions and everything is going to be magical and great. Well, that's not the reality. It's more like working your way up a hill. But here's the thing. As you move forward up that hill, You realize you can do it. You start to internalize your ability to do it differently. You start to continue that visualization of you achieving that next level about going forward. Yeah, you're going to slide backwards because everybody slides backwards, and that's okay. You're going to keep going forward. You're going to keep pushing it. You're going to keep at it, and that's the key. That's the strategy. Don't believe in perfect perfectionism, right? If you're like, wait a minute, perfect perfectionism? Yeah, because that is what your family in the head, your evil little creature, is trying to convince you of, because it's telling you, well, if you can't do it one time, you'll never do it. So just give up, stay in bed, stay isolated, whatever it is. Push back. Remember that you have that family in the head. All of us do. We have to push back using that visualization, using that self-awareness of the things that it says to you and how it manipulates how you see your life and how you see your ability to do things differently. What I want you to do is I want you to check out a video, whether you have BPD or not. It's BPD, shame, fear, doubt, and self-hatred. And I think it can really help you, even if you don't have BPD. It will help you learn those strategies. And that's what we want to do. I want you to learn those strategies and push back, but recognize that it is a process. But stay the course, right? It's hard going uphill, but it's not impossible. And that's what your family in the head is trying to convince you of. That is what you need to get rid of, that little creature, and get it out there, and you're able to do things differently so you have control over your life. So check out that video, and I will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.